Today, for medical investigations, we're going to be going over part 2 of this digestive system series, which is from the small intestine to the anus. Now, the small intestine is a tubular structure that connects and carries food from the stomach to the large intestine. Most of digestion occurs in the small intestine, as it is 22 feet long. There are 3 parts of the small intestine: the duodenum, which is the first and shortest part, where it connects to the jejunum, where most nutrient absorption takes place, and finally the ileum, which connects to the large intestine. Food moves along through peristalsis, similar to the esophagus. The tissue that keeps the intestines in place is called the mesentery. Next, we have the connecting but indirect organs in the digestive system, which are the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. First, we have the liver, which makes a sticky substance known as bile. The gallbladder then stores most of the liver's bile, which is connected to the common bile duct. The common bile duct empties into the duodenum. Bile mainly helps to break down fats into fatty acids and glycerol. We will talk about bile production and more functions of the liver in a future video of the liver and excretory system. Next, the pancreas works to make pancreatic juice, which helps to break down more food in the small intestine. It's made of a mix of enzymes that help to digest all different parts of the food and chyme. Additionally, there are many bacteria called microbiome that help to further digest food within the small intestine. Now, the small intestine receives blood from a plethora of places, but they all branch out mainly from the superior mesenteric artery. The hepatic vein also collects all of the nutrients from the small intestine and sends them to the liver to be processed. So, in the small intestine, nutrients need to be absorbed so they can be used for cells all over the body. Absorption happens through diffusion, which is high to low concentration of things through certain membranes. However, these nutrients must proceed and go through all the layers of the small intestine wall to get to the bloodstream. Now, the first layer is called the mucosa, which is a type of simple columnar epithelium, which is mainly used for absorption. This is called the mucosal epithelium. The epithelium is one-layered, with many cells lined together while being attached toward each other. Now, the small intestine contains 4 layers. The serosa is the outermost layer that contains cells that secrete fluids to help reduce friction and connect the tissues together. Then, the muscularis externa is the next layer closest to the serosa, where peristalsis contractions happen. The muscles churn in order to move the chyme along. There are 2 types of muscles that do this in the muscularis externa. First, we have the longitudinal muscles that are along the sides of the small intestine, and then the circular muscles, which engulf the small intestine. Both of these muscles work to push the food further down the digestive tract. The next layer is the submucosa, which is the other middle layer closest to the opening of the small intestine, or lumen. The submucosa helps support the mucosa, which is the closest layer aside from the villi in the lumen. And finally, we have the mucosa, which is the innermost layer. It is a mucous membrane that contains and allows for villi to transport nutrients and for the intestinal glands to release different enzymes and juices. Mucus helps protect the inside and is made by goblet cells in the mucosa. Now, inside the lumen of the small intestine, there are many villi that help to increase the surface area and allow for diffusion of nutrients. Inside each villus, or along or next to each villus, which is singular for villi, there are cells that contain villi as well. They are called microvilli and are connected to most of the cells in the mucosal epithelium. The microvilli are on the apical surface or exposed surface. The difference between microvilli and villi are that regular villi are not connected to cells and are just finger-like projections. Now, below the villi and cells in the mucosa, in the mucosal epithelium, there is a basal surface at the bottom of the cells where it connects to the basement membrane, which is devised epithelium from other tissue. Finally, below that, the lamina propria is located there, which contains blood vessels. Into the projection of each villus, there is a lacteal, which is surrounded by a bundle of capillaries responsible for transporting nutrients. Lacteals are part of the lymphatic vessel that helps transport fats. And this is all part of the mucosa. All the villi help to transport nutrients in the blood. During the absorption of these nutrients, mostly carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, essentially, to put it simply, brush border enzymes along the apical surface break down certain nutrients even further. Now, since the nutrients have already been broken down mostly, they just need to be broken down into nutrients that can be easily transported through the membranes. Also, along the mucosal epithelium, there are many different types of cells. First, there are cells called enterocytes that contain microvilli and help transfer the nutrients to the capillaries. Then, enteroendocrine cells release hormones into the villi and tell the villi what to do, like controlling nutrient levels and food intake. Paneth cells also release enzymes and juices to destroy harmful bacteria. All these cells are all scattered along the simple columnar epithelium. Next, the food moves on to the large intestine, which is also known as the colon. No digestion occurs as there are no digestive enzymes released, and only water happens to osmosis, which we will talk about later in this video. Now, the colon has 5 parts. First, there is the cecum, which is a beginning and connects with the ileocecal sphincter. Then there is the ascending colon, which absorbs fluids and salts, which makes it solid to form stool. Next, there is the transverse colon, which absorbs fluids and salts as well. Then there is the descending colon, and finally the sigmoid colon, which connects the descending colon to the rectum and holds stool until released from the rectum. Also, the appendix is a finger-like pouch at the end of the cecum. The reason we haven't talked about it is because it serves no purpose in the digestive process. Now, for the water to be absorbed in the large intestine, it has to go through layers of the large intestine. The large intestine has a very similar simple columnar epithelium to the large intestine. Again, the innermost layer is the mucosa, which contains goblet cells that secrete mucus to protect the inside of the large intestine. Then there is the submucosa, which is the connective tissue. Next, we have the muscularis, which contains the muscle cells. It has 3 bands of muscles called taenia coli, which wrap around the large intestine and make haustra. When the nerves send their signals from the submucosa, the taenia coli cause the haustra from the presence of chyme, causing the muscles to contract and move on to the next haustrum. Finally, the serosa is the outermost layer that helps to protect the large intestine from the outside by preventing friction. Now, the large intestine also has bacteria to help digest parts of the remaining food. This process is called bacterial fermentation. With bacterial fermentation, many gases are released, which causes farts. The rest of the solid waste, called stool, and ready to be expelled through the rectum. Also, with osmosis, which is water diffusion from high to low concentration, water along with electrolytes attract and go through the sodium channels. Once a stool leaves the small intestine, it goes through the rectum, which stores stool until it is ready to be expelled through the anus. Now, the rectum starts with the recto-sigmoid junction. It also contains flexures, which make up its structure. It contains vertical flexures called the sacral and perineal flexures, and also contains lateral flexures with the superior, middle, and inferior flexures. The end of the rectum is called the rectal ampulla, which allows for expansion with nerves just outside the rectum. It then continues until right before the anus, where the anorectal junction is. Then, right before the opening of the anus, there is the anal sphincter, which are muscles around the opening and closing of the anus and allow stool or feces to be released. And that officially ends this Digestive System Part 2 video. Thank you all so much for watching.